Are you awake? Please do rouse yourself. I have something to ask you. You're up. Excellent. Now, I was wondering if I could trouble you for... yes. I understand that it is quite late. Well past midnight, if I'm not mistaken. But I have urgent business that cannot... Yes, you're right. Your door is, in fact, locked. I had to enter in through the window, and that wasn't an easy climb, but I was getting to that. As you can no doubt tell from my mask, I'm a doctor. More specifically, a plague doctor. And I'm here to... Doctor who? Let's not worry ourselves with frivolous details. You may simply call me Doctor. Now, if you wouldn't mind, I'm trying to explain my presence in your home. Thank you. I'm here because I'd like to conduct a medical examination on you. Nothing too involved, I assure you. Just a series of questions and a cursory examination of some key locations on your body. Why? What an absurd question. Of course I'm qualified. They don't hand out plague masks to just anyone, you know. I'll have you know that I'm quite well respected among my peers. I'm certainly capable of a simple examination. More importantly, it is entirely possible that you've contracted a deadly plague. There was a large outbreak several towns over, and I tracked one of the residents who fled here. I found her dead in the gutter just down the street. I must make sure that no one has contracted the same plague, or this town may face a similar epidemic. Oh, well. I'm sure you don't feel sick, but that's not the same as not having the disease. It takes a while for symptoms to show up, and in the case of this plague, they start out quite subtle. At first you think you're healthy, then you think you're merely under the weather. By the time you begin to realize you're truly ill, treatments are far less effective, and you've likely passed it on to all your family members. But of course you needn't worry about catching anything from me. As you can see, my whole body is covered, and I change these clothes in between visits. The mask is filled with my own special blend of herbs that keep all manner of illness at bay. But it's quite terrible when you watch someone else realize that they've doomed the people they care about through some simple negligence. It's almost a mercy that they never live long after that, poor souls. So you'll do the examination? Wonderful. Just go ahead and sit back and relax. This will all be done very professionally. To start, I just want to ask you a few questions. First off, what is your name? Pleasure to meet you. And how old are you? All right. And your sex is... Yes, of course. Just need to be certain. Moving on from the basics, about how often would you say you leave your home? And when you're out, are you often around other people? I see. Have you experienced any excessive itching lately, particularly in your underarms and inner thighs? And have you noticed any spots or discolorations of your skin that weren't there before? Oh, would you be able to show it to me? I believe that's just a bruise. Yes, definitely a bruise. Nothing to worry about, although you could keep a hot rag on it to clear it away faster if you wish. Any other discolorations? No? Alright. How are your teeth? Do any of them feel loose, or possibly have even fallen out entirely? Good, good. Are you experiencing any nausea or dizzy spells? Last question. Have you ever spotted a shadowy figure in the distance that appears to get closer and closer every time you look? Excellent. Incidentally, if you ever do see such a figure, I'd advise you to avoid looking in its direction. Most patients I've interviewed found it quite distressing. Oh no, I haven't the foggiest of what it is. But it seems to be a common phenomenon amongst those infected. Yes, I agree, it's quite worrying. Plagues with a magical component to them are rare, but very, very dangerous. The last such outbreak was a couple of centuries ago. Those infected by it were afflicted with a charm that made others want to be near them. That doesn't sound like such a bad thing at first, but it allowed it to spread frighteningly fast. The other symptoms were much less desirable. That being said, I can't know for sure if this current plague is magical. It's striking that the visions are similar among patients, but could possibly be explained by mundane phenomena. But I digress. For the next part of this examination, I'll need to look at some areas of your body directly. Nothing compromising, I assure you. And with your permission, it would be more effective if I were able to touch as well. Again, I have no intention of examining embarrassing areas, but I understand if you're unwilling. Thank you. That will make things much easier. So, first of all, please roll up your sleeves a bit so I can look at your forearms. Yes, just like that. Now let's see. Your skin seems to be in good condition. If you'll allow it, may I pinch the skin gently? I can't help but notice it takes a moment to spring back when pinched. That's a sign of dehydration. Do you drink much water during the day? I'm afraid I must urge you to get into the habit. It has such an effect on the body. You don't need to go overboard, mind you. Just keep some water nearby you can sip whenever you feel the need. Next, I'll check the back of your neck. Let me just brush this hair aside. Yes. Does it hurt when I press down like this? Good. How about now? Well, I might have pressed too hard. One more time. Excellent. One more test. For this one, I'll require your concentration. Please take your right index finger and place it on your nose. Yes, good. Now take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Now, take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Switch to your left index finger, and in and out. Switch to your right finger, and breathe in, breathe out. Left index finger. Yes, good. Now take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Switch to your left finger and in and out. Switch back to your right finger and breathe in. Breathe out. Left finger, breathe in. Breathe out. I think I've come to a conclusion based on my findings. I have determined that you do not possess the plague that I am investigating, nor are you suffering from any other infection. That being said, you are not entirely in perfect health, and not just because of the dehydration. I believe I've detected an imbalance in your humors. You see, the body possesses 4 substances known as humors that circulate throughout your body: blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. When they are present in their correct amounts, you will feel at your best. But should you have too much or too little of any of them, it will manifest in unpleasant ways: lightheadedness, nausea, a weakened immune system, and the like. It's my professional opinion that you have too much black bile. Some of my less experienced comrades have attempted bloodletting to treat an excess of humors. An absolute barbaric idea, if you ask me. Trading an excess in one humor for a deficiency in the other three is hardly a cure, not to mention that it can be dangerous and encourage infection. But not to worry, one thing I specialize in is finding applications for medicinal herbs. I have a special blend right here that will reduce your black bile levels to acceptable levels. You may have it for free as repayment for your cooperation. There are a few ways you could go about applying the herbs. The most effective way would be to brew them into tea. A cup a day until you finish them off, and you'll be feeling right as rain. However, I'll confess that it is terribly bitter. If you can't stomach it, you may also crush it into a poultice with some oil. Take 3 pinches of it and rub it against the back of your neck, and keep it in place with some cloth for at least an hour. Well, I must say you've been quite an agreeable patient. It's been my pleasure to examine you this evening, but I'm afraid I must be off. I have many more examinations to conduct if I am to have any assurance that this plague hasn't spread. Good night, and may you remain in good health. Listen, I don't care the least bit how you get them. But if you don't have 20 more blankets within the next hour, it won't matter that these people have the plague, because they'll die of hypothermia. I'll reimburse you later. Just get moving. What I wouldn't give for a proper nurse. Maybe the College of Medicine could... Oh. My apologies. How can I help you? Another one. Well, everyone else here is busy, so I can handle your examination. Say, you seem familiar. I don't suppose we've met before. Ah, of course. You'll forgive me for not recognizing you immediately. I performed dozens of those impromptu examinations. Tell me, how are you? Ah, but if you're here at this field hospital, then I imagine you must not be doing very well. Are you concerned that you may have contracted plague? Oh dear. Well, do you recall the symptoms I went over with you the last time? Have you experienced any of them? Ah, the specter in your dreams. Yes, that's certainly the most concerning one. However, it can also be difficult to tell if it's due to plague, or if it's a simple nightmare. Could you describe this figure that you saw in your dream? And what color were the eyes? No eyes. Good. Well, not good. But I always ask that question to trip up people who are lying. You certainly do seem to be describing what other plagues victims have experienced. You didn't look at it directly, did you? Oh dear, well, try to avoid it in the future. No, I understand, but I'm afraid you didn't. It's not that the specter is always moving towards you, but halts when you look at it. When you look at it, it moves closer as soon as you look away. We'd like to prevent it from reaching you at all costs. I wouldn't be worried. Well, not overly worried. Treating the disease also keeps the specter at bay. To this day, I'm not entirely sure which is the cause of the other. Does the specter cause the disease, or the disease cause the specter? Which one is the treatment affecting? It's a concerning and frightening symptom either way, but also convenient in some ways. It's quite easy to keep an eye on a plague's progress this way. Well, it seems quite certain at this point that you have the plague, but I would still like to ask you a few questions. It's good to know which symptoms you are experiencing, and if new ones have arisen as the plague has spread. Now, first to the original symptoms. Have you experienced excessive itchiness? Originally, the underarms and inner thighs were the most common, but the nape of the neck is now also a concern. Do you have any spots or discolorations on your skin? And if so, are any of them in the shape of something? Particularly something that causes you fear. That's... I see. I didn't notice any missing teeth, but have any fallen out, perhaps in the back, or any of them loose? Uh-huh. And we've already confirmed the specter. Very well, then. As for the new symptoms, have you found yourself speaking a language you never learned, particularly one that no one can identify? Has your hair spontaneously changed color? That appears to be the same hair color you had when I first saw you, unless you dyed it. Have animals changed their behavior toward you? In particular, do domesticated animals avoid you, while wild animals appear drawn to you? That must have been embarrassing, and during a wedding, no less. Not to worry, that symptom generally wanes after the initial stage of the infection. And finally, have you experienced any intermittent blindness? Well, let's not spend any more time standing around here in the reception tent. Let's get you a room. This should do. Perhaps room is a bit misleading. We've been forced to set up a field hospital due to the healer's hall in your town being unusable. Quite a bit of contamination there, I'm afraid. Even though this is only a tent, we're doing our best to make each one private and comfortable. The bed has no blanket yet, but you'll have one within the hour, assuming someone does their job. The stove over there will hopefully keep you warm enough in the meantime. Winter is a dreadful time for the plague to start spreading this way. But then perhaps that's the very reason for the outbreak. There are a couple of things to take note of. The most important is this bell here. If you ring this bell, a nurse will come to you immediately. We must ask that you save it for emergencies, as we have many, many patients. But nurses will check in on you regularly, so never fear. The second thing you should keep in mind is these herbs hanging over the bed. They have been very effective in slowing the spread of the plague. If you ever see these herbs starting to smolder or burn, let a nurse know immediately. Use the bell. Now, based on your symptoms, I've determined that you are a moderate risk patient. You are certainly infected, and it has had some time to fester within you. However, you came to us well before any permanent damage was done, and treatment should be effective on you unless anything unexpected happens. Oh, just like the burning herbs I mentioned, or a sudden onset of hypothermia or something like that. None of it is likely, have no fear. That is... Yes, that's a difficult question to answer, my dear patient. As to whether you've spread the plague to anyone else, I cannot be sure. If you could give me the names of anyone you've interacted with in the last few weeks, I can check in with them. I'm afraid it is possible. I wouldn't think of it that way. You can't live your life assuming every little irregularity is a sign of disease. I've met people that think that way, and it's like a prison for them. You came to me as soon as you thought you might be sick, and that's all that can be expected of you. You mustn't hold yourself responsible for unintended infection. Now, of course, there are people in the world who will walk about and carelessly interact with others, even though they're aware that they're infectious. That's a different matter entirely, of course. That's the sort of thing to be discouraged. If I may, I would like to perform a simple test. It will help me know how to treat you in the future. Thank you. First, I need a drop of blood. If you could give me your finger. And there. Nothing serious. Now I just put this into this vial and add a bit of this and that. How unusual. Oh, nothing to be nervous about. In fact, this is quite promising. Well, these fluids I added can help me tell how long you've been infected for. According to this, you've had the plague in your blood since... My. Since before we even met the first time. Indeed. Quite surprising. You didn't exhibit any symptoms back then, and for quite a while after. I've long theorized that some people have a certain strength in their blood. Something that inhibits the spread of disease. You may be one such person. Would you mind terribly if I gathered a bit more blood? Just a vial full. I might be able to use it to make our treatments more effective for everyone. Thank you. You are a generous one. In that case, just one moment. This will be splendid. Thank you again. Now, as for your treatment, it seems likely that the plague will spread very slowly for you, so you can use a treatment that works more slowly, but it is more thorough. You'll take a tincture of wolfsbane and mint each morning, and twice a week we will give you a hot herbal bath. For acute cases of plague, the sickness will outpace the treatment. But when that doesn't happen, this method has cured 15 out of every 16 patients, with no case of resurgence. For now, I'll make sure you get something nice and hot to drink, and I'll send you a blanket the moment we get more. Rest well, my dear patient. You're going to do just fine under my supervision.